Hi, I'm Angela Godwin with Water World Magazine, coming to you from the National Rural Water Association's WaterPro conference here in Fort Worth, Texas. Joining me today, I am very happy to have as my guests Mahana Gomes and Juanita Ryer-Colon, both with Hawaii Rural Water. Thank you both so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so Mahana, let me start with you.
Sure.
Because just in the last 6 months, you have seen a lot of activity, and we want to hear a little bit about that and how you've dealt with that, how you've handled it.
Sure. So I do want to start by saying Hawaii has had quite a historic year. In May, as most people have seen, it was highly publicized. We had our volcano go really active, a flow that followed a normal footprint, but the last eruption in that footprint was back in the 80s. And so we did have community members out there. We had rural systems out there. That's sort of how we kicked off our year. And after that, we had a series of flooding events, whether it was just random rainfall, which hit the island of Kauai, followed by a Hurricane Lane, a Category 5, another historic event, the second to have been identified as a Cat 5, just cruised on by our island chain on the south side, brought some rapid flooding to our east side of the Big Island. Not 2 weeks later, we were impacted by Tropical Storm Olivia, cruised on by our north side of the island chain. And Juanita here will speak about it later, but our Molokai and Maui Islands were impacted by severe flooding. And so our islands are not unfamiliar to this kind of activity. In my lifetime, I was a child when these events happened prior. So the communities are really powerful, especially the rural communities. We understand that it's sort of the circle of life and what happens. But to kind of deviate from all the disaster that happened, the highlights that we've witnessed are communities, such as rural communities, coming together, our rural water systems really stepping up. You know, it's really when our operators and our managers go to work. And as a rural water team, we've been faced this year, which is basically our 7th year, so we're kind of the baby. We've been faced with some tough decisions, phone calls for aid in an active rift zone that no one ever should have to make a decision like that. But we've actually had to decide, do we go in? Do we not? Because are we prepared? And most of those systems that did call were covered within a week. And so it's just been a real growing for us, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and but we're really proud of that and proud of seeing all the love that's come from it and the unity. And so, yeah.
It's wonderful. Yeah, Juanita, let me ask you, because you're involved in the source water protection side of things. So what's your experience been with Olivia in particular? What did you see there?
So with Olivia, the tracking models were really unpredictable. So we were really watching it, especially for Maui County, because we're actually shielded by the Big Island and Oahu and Kauai, which normally during hurricane season, they're the islands that normally take the brunt of the hurricane forces. So this particular hurricane with Olivia was different, that it was coming from our north side. And so for our county, that worries us, because there's nothing buffering our county from the effects of it. And because Olivia was oscillating between, started off as a 5, and it started downgrading, but then went back up. And by the time it came down to our islands, we were actually looking at potentially getting hit with a Category 1 hurricane. And luckily, our trades came back to kind of help shear off some of that impact. But in particular, our island on Molokai, where I live, on the east side of the island, we saw the heaviest rainfall. And I don't know what the final numbers are, because I know they're still doing assessments, but on our eastern shoreline was really impacted with flooding and flash floodings that occurred. With my property in particular, we experienced flash flooding that we haven't seen in 7 years. So that was impactful. Like Mahana said, our communities are really resilient. With our community on Molokai, we are strongly rooted in grassroots efforts. So we prepared prior to the storms as a community, not having to worry about our government agencies trying to provide the support for us, we normally try and get ready ourselves, because our county is a 3-island county. So, and our main government is on Maui Island. So for Maui Island to be trying to coordinate for 3 different islands is pretty tough.
Yeah.
So we try and, as much as possible, alleviate some of that pressure as a community, because we know how to service our community, which is what's great about all of our rural communities, is that for us, as our grassroots effort, like, NRWA has always preached about, is that we come from the community up. So as for me, coming to the Rural Water family and having that instilled in me, community-oriented and grassroots effort has really been impactful, and we can actually uplift our community. So I'm fortunate that I was able to come here. I was worried that I may not have been able to make it, and know that back home they're doing their assessments, they're doing the post emergency recovery, knowing that we can still come out of it ahead of it. So it's been great, yeah. And as far as the source water side, our culture has always been around protecting our water sources. So it's just inherently in us to always be conscious about our source waters.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So how do you think, with all of the activity that you've seen with, with hurricanes and with the volcano, how is it changing the way you're preparing for storms? Are you sort of shifting how you get ready for these kinds of things?
Yes, I will say it's been quite impressive, and a dynamic growth forward in the way overall communities and islands have prepared. In the past, growing up, it was sort of it probably won't hit, more laid back response. And now, the age I'm at, I won't say it, but in my late 30s, we've now seen where bathtubs are being filled, windows are being boarded up days in advance, and really the attitude is, if you're not prepared, shame on you, because there's been enough warning.
And I think, our last hurricane was September 11, 1992, with Hurricane Iniki, which is a Category 4, I believe. So a lot of people are aware that we're kind of due for one, and to be prepared, because it took the island of Kauai such a long time to recover. And now that with technology and more resources available for communities, we can be resilient to respond to these things. And just having that conversation, continued conversation about being prepared, it would never fail you if you plan ahead.
Sure, and it keeps it in the conversation.
Yes.
It keeps it kind of alive,
Yes.
So.
And as far as the team, our Hawaii Rural Water team, we've seen such evolution. I remember the first time we had 2 back-to-back hurricanes in 2015 that hit the Big Island. And that was our first as a Rural Water team. And we kind of go into, okay, let's get ready. And then we start communicating with Primacy, who is just bombarded with phone calls, because we're trying to figure out how do we get through the front lines when the systems call, to seeing how we are now. In this year, I think it was a day or two after, we were able to send one of our circuit riders, Greg DeVito, into Kauai, where it was only accessible by chopper. But we had built relationships with the systems now when they called to say, hey, in about 2 days we'll be ready, can you send the guy in? And to see us prepared as such to just be able to hit the ground running, I'm honored and proud to be a part of a team like that. And that's part of this moving forward.
And it must be gratifying to see that progress, to say, wow, we've really come, look how far,
And, and I think because 2015, we actually had, I believe it was, the last count was 17 active hurricanes that passed through Hawaiian waters. So it really put everyone, on alert that, it's here. And we need to prepare for it regardless of where it's heading.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, it sounds like you have made wonderful progress, and I would expect that only to continue for you. So we wish you all the best of luck. Thank you so much. Juanita, thank you very much. Thank you. And for Water World Magazine, I'm Angela Godwin.